Welcome to Feeling Seen, the podcast about the movies and the characters that make us feel seen. I'm Jordan Crucchiola. My co-host today is helping us ring in the spooky season. She directed the fun, sexy, new horror film, Bone Lake, and there's an upspeak on that sexy because, hey, really depends on what you're into. Her previous films are Spoonful of Sugar and Fixation, which stars her Bone Lake lead, Maddie Hasson, a favorite of mine, and she is director Mercedes Bryce Morgan. Unsurprisingly, Mercedes is a horror lover, and she's feeling seen by an all-time character, the titular Carrie from the 1976 Brian De Palma classic, Carrie. Mercedes Bryce Morgan, what else do the people need to know about you before we get started here today? You're also a writer and producer. I want to get that out there.
Yes. No, I'm also a writer-producer, but I am just someone who I kind of started out. I did a lot of music videos and commercials. People might know Happier by Bastille and Marshmallow, which is a very different tone than this. And I really love the horror space and erotic thrillers. And really just anything that's lifted is my cup of tea. I'm not subtle enough as a person to be the type of person that would direct a slice of life, walk in the park.
I feel like we might classically interpret as like a Sundance indie sort of situation.
Yes, I love those movies, but I can't do it. It's too intense.
I feel like you'll be pleased to know that a friend of mine who likes horror movies enough, but it's not really what he typically goes after. But he was like, you know what I'm also excited about? Bone Lake. And he started saying, he was like, I don't know how I got on this algorithm, but it has found me. And I keep seeing these clips pushing me. He's like, it seems kind of like scary, but it also seems erotic and like kind of actiony and like sort of crazy. And I was like, you know what? You are not being sold a false bill of goods. You will actually get all of those elements within Bone Lake.
Yes. Well, thank you for spreading the word. And especially on that, I just want people to know that it's funny. It's silly.
It is funny. It is funny and silly.
I wanted to make the title is Bone Lake. Like, this is not a movie that should be taking itself seriously. Mm-hmm. And so we just wanted to create an experience where the kind of movie I love to go watch is you go to the theater and you hear the people interact around you. Like, some people have chosen to yell at the screen. I'm like, good. Yell at that screen. Like, gasp, laugh. Like, it's meant to feel that way.
Obviously, like, people will be finding this in the season of horror, 31 Days of Spooky and such, but you said you love erotic thrillers as well, and there is the erotic thriller aspect of this film 100%. So I would like to actually hear first about what are some touchpoint erotic thrillers for you that have made you the filmmaker you are today?
Yes. So my favorite erotic thriller of all time that is controversial, but Elle, I think, is very fantastic because it makes me feel so uncomfortable.
Could be, and as big of a Starship Troopers fan as I am, I think Elle might be Paul Verhoeven's absolute masterpiece.
No, I agree, most definitely. But like beyond that too, like there's some things like Wild Things that are so ridiculously fun, but I wish the female characters were just like a tad bit better, but I'll be like, okay, you're in the 90s. But like Basic Instinct is a classic too. Like there's just so many things like that. And with this, I want to bring sex back in movies. Like I'm so excited for it and here for it. But I also wanted to create a movie where the female protagonist can also be sexual, and it's not something where we mistrust her or it means that she's devious. It's just a part of who she is. And so I think like there really is a next era to look at of erotic thrillers.
Okay, well, the sex aspect of it, I feel like that's going to lead well into the movie that we're going to talk about. But first, I do want to say then, I would love to hear your feeling on where we are in sex in horror. And because obviously we're outside of, I would say, the sort of postmodern notion of like the Scream rules. You got to like, I don't feel like we don't lean on that as like the touch point anymore. Like we've gone through that, but there are still like the sin hunting aspect of killing and don't have sex because you're going to die, that kind of thing. But as horror, I feel like my theory is that we are post-horror bubble. Meaning like that huge expansion of the genre in front of people's eyeballs, where the blockbuster sensibility of what a contemporary Blumhouse movie is started meeting the minds with art house cinema, and the A24 horror picture was born, and people were like, hey, did you guys know horror's good? And horror fans were like, forever, yes. And so, but what I feel like comes on the other side of this sort of bubble is this great playground for experimentation where I feel like we're in a space where we can play with new sets of expectations for the genre, because it's not like, hey, it's going to be it and it's going to make $1 billion. I feel like it's back to a flying under the radar kind of thing, where we're allowing for more surprise instead of a sort of machine-like expectation of horror success at the box office. And I wanted to hear from you then specifically about what you feel about the role of sex in horror and perhaps female or genderqueer protagonists in incorporating sex into horror. Where are we there for you?
Yeah, totally. So I think that, first of all, I love this conversation. I think that we're in a time where people are even combining more genres into horror. And so, because like we're in this, we talked about the postmodern Scream era, but we're also in this meta-modern era where we're still combining things because we've had more than 100 years of cinema. Like we've seen everything, but I think we're doing it in an earnest way. And I think especially because there's such a strong horror fan base, but people also love other genres. It's like, you look at Weapons that came out recently, and it's like the fact that that's like Magnolia, I'm like, that is more genres than just horror encapsulated into it. And so like for me too, I'm like, I wanted to make it comedic and I wanted to make it an erotic thriller. And so I think people are just like excited to see that seep out into those different ways.
You know what? One of the things that excited me the most about Weapons, I really, really enjoyed it. But I think the thing walking away from it that I have really grasped onto the most is that it was a scary movie that was funny that I would never describe as a horror comedy. Because like horror comedy, I feel like really surged, and like the notion of like we kind of couldn't, like Blumhouse wouldn't make a slasher unless it was funny kind of situation, like LOL funny. And it feels like though I'm so excited for us to go into a space where like there's that madness, like that comedy of madness that does exist within Bone Lake. And I'm really excited for horror movies to really execute on a comedy that does not make them horror comedies, but that balances the tones within really deftly in that nice pressure release valve kind of way.
Exactly. And I think too is kind of, we go through like different eras of horror. So we went through this like quote unquote like elevated phase. But like if you look at Evil Dead 2 and you look at Hellraiser, like they're funny because like what's happening is like ridiculous. And I think people, unless they're horror fans, don't think of like horror movies as necessarily being able to be funny. But it's interesting because then we see the remakes of like Hellraiser and Evil Dead and they're less like funny camp in the originals, but we come from this place. And so I think people are like, they're like, these are the movies that we love. Like, let's get back to this aspect of horror because it's fun.
Okay, well then you have brought one of the classic of all classics to the table then, a foundational text that is so integral to creating the language of horror as we understand it today. Tell me about the film, the character that you brought for us to discuss today.
Yeah, totally. So I brought Carrie to discuss, and the reason why I wanted to discuss Carrie is because it is the ultimate coming of age movie. And when I watched this as a young teen girl, it just kind of deals with everything that is so fucking terrifying about puberty and feeling weird all the time. And it has that metaphorical emotional experience just explode for people.
Queer horror is so much of like a Venn diagram of space for my writing and just sort of my interests and things I'm talking about so much. And Carrie is one that comes up, I found so often in these conversations about resonance for queer folks in particular in horror cinema. And it's interesting listening to, it's not like there are two genders kind of situation, but I found that there's a fascinating frequency to the polls of responses to the specifically queer connection to Carrie, which is a grouping of people who relate to the shame that Carrie was made to feel by Mrs. White, by her mom, by that like that coming of age aspect, the plug it up, like being tampons, like the ultimate body horror.
Your girl. Dirty pillows,
Exactly, the dirty pillows.
The dirty pillows, God.
They're just like the polarity between the identification with the shame of Carrie and then seeing a character rise out of that, and then the identification with the anger, like the faction of people who I've talked to who are like, I wanted to burn that fucking school gym down. And I wanted to hear where you're like, and perhaps it's been a journey of where your tuning fork has hit with Carrie over the years in that way.
Totally. So even just like another comment before I talk about like my personal thing, but like I think what's really interesting to explore is something that I've heard said, and I've kind of like really held it to my heart, is that women hurt inward and men hurt outward. And what I mean by that is like, if we look at female rage, it's like when something happens, if like you're being bullied in school, the thought is woman they self-harm.
Yeah.
And men might go shoot up a school. And so I think that the fact that we're seeing this character turn from this inward rage to this outward rage is so cathartic for people. Like, obviously, we don't want someone to go, all Carrie on a school.
Do not.
Not at all.
Do not.
But, like, us seeing her not get stepped on anymore, I think is, like, very, very important for people. And for my personal journey in relation to that, you might not know it now because I have to go on interviews all the time as film director, but I was so deathly shy for the good first portion of my life, like probably until I was like 18 years old. I was so shy that I could not talk to waiters at restaurants. Like I would have to have my parents or my friends order for me. And I think that I like to kind of think of myself as the arced Carrie.
Okay.
Okay. But like, it was just this fear of you're put in this situation and you're othered and you just feel weird and you don't know what to do. And then especially like women with our bodies or just like anyone with their bodies, we're like, what is this?
Yeah.
And no one told me what this is. And there's so many things that we just have to figure out through trial and error. And so seeing someone go through that is really powerful. And I think like, especially for her too, it's such an iconic classic scene of her getting her period and having that be the worst experience for her in the world. And I think every woman has probably gotten their period in a place where they did not want to get their period.
At some point or another. At some point or another, it's happened.
It happens once a month. I'm like, it's gonna happen at a time when you don't want it to happen. And so having that and just like that relatable aspect kind of go through that path is just like it struck a chord.
And God made Eve from the rib of Adam, and Eve was weak and loosed the raven on the world, and the raven was called sin. Say it. The raven was called sin.
Why didn't you tell me, Mama?
Say it.
No.
The raven was called sin.
Ooh, woman, and the raven was called sin.
And first sin was intercourse. First sin was intercourse.
I didn't sin, Mama. No,
say it.
I didn't sin, Mama.
First sin was intercourse. First sin was intercourse. First sin was intercourse.
And the first sin was intercourse, Mama. I was so scared. I thought I was dying. And the girls, they all laughed at me and threw things at me,
And
Mama.
Eve was weak. Say it.
No, Mama.
Eve was weak.
No.
Eve was weak.
No.
Eve was weak. Say it.
No, Mama.
Say it.
Eve was weak. Eve was weak.
Well, and I've been thinking so much lately about, like, there's so much, like people having, I'm 40, there's people having babies around me, people having their second or third babies around me. And at 40, and I find that conversations I have with 25-year-olds are the same I have with other, like people who are my age. We are so mind blown every time we learn a new fact about what happens to you when you're pregnant. Because we're like,
yes,
no one fucking told us. Like
no
any
one
of
tells
this.
you. I mean, even just the fact of like, I think I was 25 or 26 when I found out like what the phases of our period are.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait a second. There's a time a month where I'm going to like look in the mirror and think my face looks better at sometimes the month versus like other times of the month. And I'm like, this is chemical. This isn't me. Like, it would be so nice to have been told that. And then I was like, oh my God, a flow app. Like, it's so nice to like be able to like know what's chemically going on my body. But I took health class. I mean, when I took health class in high school, I remember I showed up. It was my first time in a public high school, and our health class teacher got fired for coming on to a teen girl student. And so we didn't have anyone. And so we just had subs the entire year of these subs being like, why am I teaching these teenagers? Like,
yeah,
what anatomy
we're
is?
watching a movie today, everybody. Like, maybe bring in the TV with a big belt strapped around it to keep it on to the cart kind of thing.
Oh, exactly. What a time, you know. I remember that belted TV that was called "We Don't Want to Teach Today." Yeah.
And to that, like I think that line of like the dirty pillows is kind of what made me think of that, of just like it's just simply her boobs, like that, and like, but
exactly.
they're cast down with this pejorative of dirty pillows. And
I know.
I mean, sadly, one of the great turns of phrase of all time, also, that is just way too much fun to say.
I can see your dirty pillows. Everyone will.
Breasts, Mama. They're called breasts, and every woman has them.
But so then you become a filmmaker. You, like, the most forward and putting oneself out there thing to do. Like, not only am I going to have a job, I'm going to have a job where its purpose is to get in front of people and be consumed and have them create thoughts and reactions based on my work. So what was the thing that sent you into was it an expression, a self-expression for you in lieu of being able to even like talk to waiters, or was it like I need to challenge myself? Like, how did that come about?
I think it's because I've always loved movies so much. I was like such a film nerd kid, and I just knew, I'm like, if I want to do what I want to do with my life, I kind of need to get out of my own way.
Okay.
So like, it kind of sounds like a simple thing, but it's the most complicated thing to, it's like going to therapy where you realize you're like, it's how I was thinking about things. Like, I'm the one standing in my own way. Right. And so I just realized, I'm like, you know what? If I do this, I can do what I want to do. And if I don't, I can't. And I think it's just fake it till you make it. And I just realized, I'm like, man, me going out and have conversations with people, like everyone's people. Like, I think that we don't realize that like you grow up as a kid and you're like, adults are just like these kids that just got older and like everyone's doing life for the first time. And so once you realize that, it just kind of humanizes everybody.
When did horror / genre start becoming like a preferred mode of expression then?
Yeah, totally. So it's funny enough, when I grew up in a very sex positive household, unlike Carrie.
Okay, outstanding. We're so happy about that for you.
Yeah. And if anything, when I was a kid, we called boobs pillows in my household, because when you're a kid, you want to lay on your mom's boobs and they're like a very nice pillow.
Sure, yeah.
So
a
like
comforting, a home kind of presence.
A nice, comforting home pillow instead of dirty pillows. But I was not allowed to watch horror until later. Okay. my family on like the sex violence spectrum were kind of like more of the European mindset. Sure. And so I all of a sudden, like when I was a teenager, I kind of got all of the horror movies at once. I was like, oh my God, this is so exciting. And also as like a former goth emo kid, I was like, what? There's like a whole community of people who love this. And also I could make a life and a living in this, and it can be mainstream to be alternative and subversive. And so that's what really enticed me about it.
Now, I'm curious about that relationship between the mainstreaming of subversion. What does subversion do when it becomes mainstreamified? Do you feel compelled to push against the bounds of what the mainstream allows as acceptable amounts of subversion? Like, what is your, as an emo goth kid who came into being a filmmaker, wanted to make horror movies? Yeah. What is that? What is the tension between wanting to reach people and wanting to push things that make it harder to get something done? Make it harder to make something.
Okay, I kind of like to look at this like in a pie chart of like how much you can subvert something and is considered mainstream or not. Sure. So like if you look at something, most like mainstream but like quote unquote subversion movies, I think it's 70% what people know and 30% that's like shocking in a way.
Okay.
And then if you kind of get into the territory of something like Martyrs or something like Elle, you're like, this is maybe like 40% comfortable and 60% like, what the fuck is this? And then you start to get into avant-garde cinema and they're like, fuck all of your comfort. Yeah. But like for me personally, it's like I love the whole expanse of it. But I think it's a really cool, exciting space to be in, to kind of be able to reach more mainstream people and like show them something that they would have not otherwise known. And so I think like playing in that 70-30 space is not necessarily bad, but like cool, because like you get to reach people in a way and go like, hey, have some new ideas or like feel uncomfortable, and like it's really powerful in that way.
Well, and into the note of like making like, pushing the level of comfort, like they're you've now worked with Maddie Hassan a couple of times, and it was Fixation before this one, and now Bone Lake. What does it do in terms of actor-director to come into, particularly in like a horror movie, a genre movie, multiple times, where you're like, I do want to go outside the comfort zone. I do want to push people. And that means pushing the people making the thing too. Because it doesn't mean like they're not necessarily going to have an easy day at work. So what does it do for you as a director, and how does it help you to come into something like Bone Lake with where you're going to genre blend a little, you're going to get a little South Korean with it in that way, like where we can have the whole milkshake of stuff. What does it do for you to have that baseline of trust with your heroine when you know, like, all right, we have a language with one another?
Totally. I mean, it's huge. Like for Maddie, an example, like I've never seen her do a bad take. Like she's just such a good actress where it allows us to kind of have the room to play. So I know I'm like, no matter what Maddie does, it's going to feel real. and it's just going to feel special in this way. And then after that, we can kind of play with different things of how soon is something known? How fast are we giving away this plot twist or not? And so like it allows us just to have a basis of understanding and then just go like, let's try stuff. Like, let's do the extreme version of this. And maybe it's too extreme or maybe like we really like that.
With Carrie, like, that, like you said, that was a way that I hadn't thought about it before of like the models of men like being angry outwardly and women sort of like perhaps being angry internally, and what a great example, because they're like, you know, there are plenty of like hagsploitation, there are plenty of like psycho biddies, like there's that kind of thing, but Carrie isn't she's not like a broad strokes like caricature of like this lady gone wild, like Academy Award performance by Kathy Bates in Misery, but still like a psycho biddy kind of thing. And this is a girl pushed to the absolute brink where she feels like she has no choice, it seems like, but to like kind of literally and figuratively explode on all these people who put her down. And I wonder, like, who do you, like, because it is still such an incredible example of this, like, what do you see in the sort of wake of Carrie? Do you feel like contemporaries have risen to her level of exhibiting that kind of like sort of gendered split of expression that like that can kind of like, that are standing on the shoulders of the giant suitably, or like is the blueprint still kind of hitting it harder for you than anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I think it like depends for thing. I think that like we see like a couple of special movies that like improve upon that, but like I get sent a lot of scripts, and it's funny because I get sent some scripts that like think that they're being like the next big feminist thing.
Sure.
And I think both female and male writers and everyone in between can write all different types of people if they understand them. But there's some people where I've had some male writers send these scripts and I'm like, that's not what the woman would do in this situation. Like she wouldn't explode on someone in this way. Like this is like a fantasized version of like what she would do. And I'm like, maybe we wish that she would do this, but like a woman is like scared, like that, like we walk around and we're like, someone might physically like overpower us and hurt us. So like, if you're in a bad situation, the first thing you're not going to do is be like, I'm going to teach you a lesson. Usually like there's a couple of women that have like gotten to that place, but like a lot of times it's like, I need to like make it through this and I need to be okay.
Yeah. And because I think about like a conversation I have a lot with lady friends of mine who are filmmakers and working in genre. Like we have a lot of conversations about, like you were talking earlier about like wanting to bring back sex in a satisfying way to film, and I talk with so much with my friends about like, you know what, boobs are fine. Like seeing boobs in a movie, fun. We enjoy like. It doesn't have to be done in a way that makes you feel shitty, but like,
no, exactly.
Me and so many people I know are like millennials raised on the mean ass horror movies of the 2000s, and there are aspects though of that cruelty that we do miss, that we don't necessarily need to bring back the bad old days of the aughts and its point of view on the world to do that. But I wanted to hear about that balancing act too, of like, to the point of the conversation about subversion, like having a sense of mean spirit, like a sense of like, I'm a little bit in danger with this filmmaker, while also being like, but it's also 2025 and I'm not a piece of shit.
No, exactly. No, and I think that like good female characters or good anyone characters is like, people are flawed. Like I want to see people do things that are fucked up and messy and, like get mean with it a little bit. And I think also just like speaking about seeing breasts in movies, it's like, I don't know. When I'm directing on set too, and I see nudity, I'm like, oh, it's more people. Like it's people over there. And it's just, I think it's interesting to just analyze ourselves of why, it is so, we're like, oh, sex in movies. Like, what is this?
Hey, Carrie, I want to talk to you. It's about this attitude you have about yourself. I mean, you're always walking around, with your hair down, all moping around. Carrie, come here, you big silly. I want you to look at yourself. Would you look at that? Come on. Now that's a pretty girl. Look at your eyes. A little mascara to bring it out. A little. Your lips. Try some lipstick. You have nice, pretty lips, and your cheekbones. Look at your hair. It's beautiful hair. You could just put it up a little, maybe add a little curl. What do you think? Yeah.
I was talking about this in the last conversation I was able to have with a person for the show, which was like, things are so bad now, and they feel so bad now, and things feel so increasingly like the walls closing in on expression and people being able to freely be themselves, and they're being returning to a more and more narrow codified sense of what is suitably free expression, and horror being a barometer of our social anxieties and our fears and cultural mores of terror at the times when, you know, they're made, reflecting back who we are. It feels like these times, my great hope in terms of movies is that like a time of like clampdown becomes a time of like reaction among, because horror filmmakers are like, maybe it's a benefit of low expectation, but like a bar set low for sort of credibility, but the audacity to challenge, the audacity to do something super fucked up at a time that is feeling super fucked up. And I wanted to hear about what is motivating for you as a creator in a time of great emotional trial such as we're in.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, it's shitty, but it's like the best motivator, because you're like, we need to do something about this. Like, it's just so upsetting. And whether that be doing something about it where you're having characters actually tackle that, or you're just like creating escape for people, I think that those are equally like valid in doing that. But like, you know, just kind of talking about like what characters are going through, and that's kind of a reflection of what's going on around us. You know, there's been certain, it's like when we had birth control, that's like where Rosemary's Baby was like first coming about. And like we see that throughout movies. And we also talked about, okay, sex is punished in the past. And for me, with Bone Lake, I really wanted to see characters who were punished for not having good communication skills. Instead of
getting at the notion of, if these people would just fucking talk to each other.
If anything, they should have good sex and like communicate through that. And then you might be able to like, you know, help your partner orgasm in a way that like feels great for both of you. But like, to me, that's what's interesting, is I go, where's a time where we could see equal, we want partners to be equal. We want them to have good sex so they're equal, but they're not communicating well. I think that's 90% of the problem. So that's just like a little microcosm of that. But for me, that's a cool new era of things to punish in a horror movie. Yeah.
It's time for a break, but I will be right back with Mercedes. And then I will have one quick thing before I go about, you know what, screw it, about a possible eulogy for the decades-spanning Fast franchise. So stick around at the end and we'll talk about that a little bit.
Now everybody knows that The Greatest Generation has always been Max Fun's go-to podcast for old Star Trek recaps. But what my theory presupposes is, what if it isn't? In a shocking turn of events, Greatest Trek, the comedy podcast covering new Trek, has gone through a temporal wormhole back to the very beginning.
Because we are now reviewing Star Trek The Original Series. That means when you subscribe now, you'll get episode-by-episode recaps of all the 1960s style action and intrigue, along with all the jokes and fun that make Greatest Gen and Greatest Trek the #1 Star Trek podcasts out there. Subscribe now to Greatest Trek on MaximumFun.org.
Hey gang, it's Jesse Thorne, host of Bullseye with Jesse Thorne. We are ringing in 25 years of Bullseye this fall. That's right, listener, 25 years. I started the show in my dorm room at UC Santa Cruz. What does that mean for you? Well, we'll have a whole month of special shows, new and old, for one thing. We are putting on live shows in Los Angeles, New York, and Santa Cruz. Got guests like Adam Scott, Roy Wood Jr., and Rebecca Sugar, just to name a few. And on October 9th, I will interview 25 people in a row. You can watch that live and streaming on our YouTube channel. I hope you'll plan on celebrating with us. That's MaximumFun.org/events. Thanks.
Classics are labeled as such for a reason, and it feels like watching Carrie again. It's one of those, like, it's hitting me in a way to experience it right now, where it's like, gosh, this shouldn't feel as like, I've always understood this as like a great movie that like resonates with me as a horror fan because it works so great as a horror movie.
Yeah.
But like watching it now, there are these aspects of like what Mrs. White is and what she represents and the cost of the Mrs. Whites of the world and the anonymization of the internet, creating forums for just like unbelievable bullying and you know, the rotting, you know, the fish rots from the head kind of situation of like tones set from the biggest megaphones of like the cruelty being the point. You watch Carrie now and it's like, shit, like the tone of this feels so raw and present now in a way that makes me so uncomfortable. Like, I almost was more uncomfortable watching Carrie now than I have been watching it in the past. Like, because I didn't have like a remove from the battle days in that particular way that I felt like I used to.
Yeah, no, I think about that with 8th grade too, and I'm like, oh my god, like I watched that as an adult, and I'm like, that hurts, like in a very similar Carrie way. But I also wonder, I'm like, if I was an 8th grader watching this, like, what would my interpretation of this be? I don't think it would be the same thing because you're able to like be out of the horrors and look back on it. But also, you know, talking about classic movies of something that is not only poignant then, but also lasts throughout time. It's kind of beautiful in a way to think, oh my God, we're humans and we're going through the same things. But it's also fucking upsetting to think like, really, we're still dealing with the same shit. Like, God, you know, it's like just a totally different movie. But Network is an example where it's like every year you watch Network, you're like, it's relevant again. And then 5 years later, you're like, it's still relevant. Yeah. You're like, why is this still relevant? God.
I find myself turning to movies kind of so much right now. And like, I love movies, I always have, but like my hopes, it's almost unfair. Like the amount of like hope that I'm putting on cinema right now to like get us through this because it is the populist medium. Like it is still the thing where we go sit in a room with a bunch of strangers and we hoot and we holler at images on screen and have a shared experience. Of course, we do that at concerts as well, but like those are different things than like a packaging and an interpretation of our world in image and story. And so I just like, I don't know, I feel like I'm just like, I don't know, God, like cinema, get us through this. Like here, like the feedback to one battle after another and how people are reacting to it. I'm like, we need a clarion call. And I like, it's like, I feel like I'm putting a lot of fucking pressure on directors right now to like save us.
But I think there should be
from this.
There should be pressure. I think that like gay marriage was legalized because we had content that made that like normalized that for people. And I think I very think that was like lined up historically to us having internet and us having just access to more things. And so I do think that that's important.
Well, to that notion of like the access to more things and the inspiration from more corners. And yeah, a difficult part about being like, hey, we're going to censor people is like, oh shit, you're saying that in a really interconnected world. Like, and those who control the algorithm control a lot of things, but like, where are you drawing creativity from right now as we have a reach to kind of wherever we want to go to see whatever we want to see? Where are you finding inspiration from various corners right now as a filmmaker?
Totally. So one of my favorite things to do, I have something that I call the questions of life. And when I meet people,
big.
Yeah. And when I meet people, I love talking about weather. I love talking about traffic. But I also want to know, I'm like, define sex. I'm like, what do you think happens when you die? I'm like, would you have sex with your clone? Like, define cheating. Or just like things like that, that I want to know. And I get a lot of inspiration just by like talking to people. That might be someone I talk to at a party. And I'm like, great, I'm going to let's like dig in. Like if people are down to get into deep conversation, I'm down. And so like that, I just want to talk to people, and I get inspired by talking to people.
Well, and Bone Lake is a movie of strangers being placed in each other's laps and like trying to, make the best of that, and then it turns out in the worst possible way for some of the people who are there. But what teased out Bone Lake? Like where did your passes on that come from? Where you wanted to make this
for sure
your own from the script that was pre-existing?
Yeah, so something that didn't originally exist in the script was stage faking her orgasms. And that's something where I'm like, I've talked to so many different women about this, and most women I know have done that in one point or another. And it's either feeling insecure about yourself or you want to make someone else feel good. And like, it's a very relatable experience, and no one knows how to deal with it. And it's just uncomfortable for everybody. And then also like from Diego's side too, it's like when that happens, you're like, damn, I want to please my partner and I don't know what's happening and I feel insecure that like is she masturbating instead of wanting to be with me? And so like that's just like conversation that I've had with people over the years, and I thought this is a really great subtextual way to show us that they are not on the same page and not on the same team, and kind of see how that goes down.
Well, and I felt too like watching the movie Bone Lake about like it is in its a slight way. It's also like a horror of manners. Like there's those kinds of I feel like not exactly a horror of manners, but the sort of like what will you do to put another person at ease? What will you do to adhere to the norms of a situation? The most uncomfortable I've ever been watching anything was the movie Compliance, starring Dreama Walker, based on a real true thing that happened where she works for like, it's basically supposed to be like McDonald's. A scam cop, like not real cop, is on the phone with the manager, has this cop do increasingly horrible things to this woman under the guise of, we really need you. Like this crime, like are overextended. Like we can't get our officers to you, but like what we need you to do now. And he just further debases her. And I had to walk out of that movie 3 times before I could finish it. But watching Bone Lake, I was so like compelled by the points that were like moments where the character, like perhaps somebody could be like, you know, why would you stick around for this? It is shocking what people will do to maintain the harmony of a situation before they advocate for themselves, or in the name of tamping down the possibility of danger by just being like,
totally,
my brain is protecting itself from what could be going on right now, and also from the notion of being rebuffed as like rude or bitchy or mean, and it's like that is incredibly realistic. Like people will,
it is realistic.
Watch it when Diego like completely just forfeits in a contentious moment with the other guy in this movie. Like there's an egregious betrayal of him, and what he does to be the one to smooth over the situation despite how rightfully fucking enraged he is at this other person is like, people do that. Like this is so uncomfortable because people do that.
Yeah, people stay in relationships for a lot longer than they're supposed to because they don't want to hurt someone's feelings. And people do that all the time because like we're like conflict avoidant. We're like, let's not bring that up. And it's like, maybe these characters should like be more conflict. Like maybe they should talk to each other. Maybe they should tell other people to fuck up. Like maybe that would help everything a lot.
I gotta say, and the practical, like the blood and gore in this movie is really good.
Thank you.
I just gotta say that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's something that's really important to me because like when I see bad prosthetics in a horror movie, I'm like, it takes me out of it so much. And I'm just like, I'm like, people are waiting for this when you're watching the movie. I'm like, let's let them have it. Let's go for it. Yes.
Well, yeah, you can accomplish a lot by doing a couple things really effectively. It doesn't, like, not everybody has to be like split in half, like Bone Tomahawk style, to have it be like, wow, what a gory, gruesome movie. If you do a couple of well-placed elements of that, I feel like it can cast a sheen over the rest of the movie where like the viciousness of it becomes so pervasive over so many of the frames, even if you use it sparingly, only in the frames where you want it to have the most effect. And I feel like this movie does a really good job of picking its spots.
Thank you. And it's like you mentioned the like splicing in half. Just personally, I've also found that it's like when someone hurts their hands, their feet. For me, that's like way more gruesome to watch than that because I'm like, I've experienced that. Like I've stepped on a needle before and I've like spliced my hand open. Whereas like I haven't been cut in half before. So like when I see that, I'm like, that feels so much more real to me. I'm like, hell no.
Like I think that's a really good point. Like I haven't been cut in half, but like I've bit my lip uncomfortably. Like
you're like, actually I have been cut in half.
Yeah, I'm incredibly resilient. We're all okay now. Like it's going great. I would love to hear your thoughts as somebody, like we've talked about like subversion and sex in movies and women and pleasure and things like that. And I find myself when the kind of circular conversations that can happen around classics that like, even though they're obviously really good, I can find myself starting to resent like the classic movie because like conversations are just foisted upon it so often. I'm like, can we talk about the movies that like the classics made possible a little bit more? Like I wanted to hear about when the relationship for you as a creator who has taken inspiration for these and put them into your life in such a practicable and material way, like that balance between like the reverence for the thing that came before and then the like, thank you, but also fuck off for a little bit. I'm going to do my own thing.
Yeah.
Because I feel like you get asked about the classic movies, and we're talking about it, and there's like this
I know,
reverence.
we're talking about one of those classic movies.
And there's like this reverence that has to come for it, but also like your movie came out right now, and your movie is happening right now, and it's really fun. So I don't know. I wanted to hear from somebody on the inside about that.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, I think paying like reverence to the classics is so important, but also like people should go see new movies because like we want new things and we want to have new conversations. And I think like it's important to have that as a basis. But like, you know, even us talking about Carrie today, it's like, great, let's talk about this like in relation to a new movie. So we can talk about something different. Mm-hmm. And like, to me, that's also super refreshing. And I don't know, like, you know, I did the whole film school, got to watch all the classics, like watch the IMDb top 250. And it's funny because like, you know, a lot of things you watch it at the time and you go, this is really important. Mm-hmm. But I go, if someone does another Fight Club plot twist ending, that was my like 13th reason. I'm like, please do not. Like, please do not do that. Because like we've done it. And so I think even like to your point, it's like, even though we've done everything, there's still things that like I haven't seen. If I'm like, okay, we have queer characters, but now they're getting taken out again. And I'm like, please put them back and like, please like normalize things.
I guess what I wanted to hear from you about was that balance of like the character you want to root for. Perhaps it's a lady, perhaps it's a gender nonconforming person. Obviously you work with heroine like characters in your films, and like the fun of villainy and the fun of just an absolutely awful character. Like you mentioned Hellraiser. Like Julia in Hellraiser is one of my favorite characters of all time. And thank God Hellraiser 2 is like her movie, because she is one of the most egregious, wretched women ever captured on screen. And like, I love a villain. So I don't want to, like, I love queer characters and women, and I love villains. And I want women and queers to get to play the most fun thing on screen, even though cliche and misogynist and bigoted tropes had demanded for so long the sort of like likable such and such character so that we can get behind them and root for them. But like also I don't want to take away from my favorite kinds of actors' characters the opportunities to be awful. And as someone who works in genre, I wanted to hear from you about like that, like, because, hey, sometimes the worse a character gets, as long as they're good at it. Like, who do we remember from Fatal Attraction? We remember Glenn Close. Yeah, and that's not a positive representation of women.
No, exactly.
But it's a fun one.
Yeah, villains are fun. And it's like, especially with Bone Lake 2, I'm like, our villains need to be fun. Mm-hmm. Like, we need to have fun with it. And like, for me, I think that like true gender equality, or just like people not being homophobic and have good queer characters, and like, people are people. Mm-hmm. It's like, let this person be bad, let this person be good. And like, that's like, if we can truly get to a space where we think and feel that way about everyone, I'm like, that's what I'm going for. Mm-hmm. Because I don't think anyone wants to be like, she's a woman, she can't do this awful thing. I'm like, women serial killers are fascinating. Yeah. Like, let's have fun with that. But I think you also need to show all times, because, you know, there's also like a time, it's like sleepaway camp is like an example of like queer representation where you're like, holy fuck, like that's not great. Yeah. Like, let's not do that. Uh-huh. And so I think it's like, it's having content made by people that, you know, whose viewpoints like are the same side of yours. You're like, they get it. Mm-hmm. And so they're able to like play around with it because we have like the same ethics basis. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I feel like that trust, like the trust of authorship, I feel like goes a long way for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's my time, and
cool.
You're such a delight to chat with. I feel like I could just keep
back at you,
keep going on this. Thank you so much for your time, Mercedes. I really appreciate you coming and joining us on the show today. And Bone Lake is a blast of a time.
Thank you so much for having me, Jordan. This was a blast.
Thank you so much to Mercedes Bryce Morgan. Bone Lake is in theaters right now, so run out and find a screening. Get out there for the little movies. We can do it. Support guys like Paul Thomas Anderson, too. But make sure you're getting out there, especially in the name of Halloween in October, to catch Bone Lake. And now, that one quick thing before I go. It was reported this week that let's go. I'll read you the discussing film tweet that discussing film. Look at them out here with all this news. They posted this week. Let's see. Let's do the quote. Universal execs are not sure they'll make the final Fast and Furious movie unless there's about $50 million in budget cuts. Despite what Vin Diesel has claimed, there's no approved script, no release date, and most of the cast don't have deals to return. End quote. End tweet. And I just gotta say, guys, if you saw Fast X, which not as many people saw it as they did prior entries in the franchise, but a whole heck of a lot of them did. This is meant to be part 1 of 2. This first movie, allegedly first in a 2-part of the final installment, ends on it ends on a cliffhanger so hung out there. It's like an episode of television. It's not even like, you know, in Hunger Games, when we get that shot of Katniss, she's being brought up on the jet. I think it's being out of the Hunger Games dome, the arena. I think this is where she's coming out of. And it's the final shot of that Hunger Games movie that it's teeing right up into the next one. Like, we know the series is continuing, but it's like that focus, it's a fix just on her eyes. And she is just like, she's like hyperventilating and like her eyes wide open to camera. And she is just like, there's so much communicated in that final shot of her eyes. We're like, holy shit, the Mockingjay has caught fire. And the next movie after this is going to be such a heater. So much is at stake. Oh my God. Like, that movie is clearly like, she opens her eyes, which means something is about to happen. And I'm pretty, God, does the next movie after that, God, fact check me. This next movie after that, like, open with her, like, basically getting up from that moment. And, like, we pick up, I think, immediately. Again, fact check me on that. But the point is, and, like, cliffhanger endings have happened before, but there's still a kind of a resolve, typically, to when a movie ends, even if there is, like, a set-up sequel that you know is going to happen. Maybe it's a post-credit sequence that will feel more like just a blatantly open door. But the way Fast X Part 1 ends, literally like a catastrophic wave. I'm pretty sure if I'm remembering this correctly, sorry, spoilers. The Hoover Dam has been exploded by villain Jason Momoa, and Dom is like in the path of the wave to come with his child. It's like a certain death moment. It's like in the middle of the tsunami that will wreak havoc in the disaster movie. What if the movie ended? What if the movie ended when the tsunami showed up and everybody's looking up at it in horror? That's what happened. And you know what? I want a Fast X Part 2 just to see if the heights of ridiculous in Fast X Part 1 would be exceeded, would be matched, would it fall short of them? I don't need closure on the Fast franchise. I feel like I have it. Every movie ends basically with so much closure in this franchise where it's like people sitting around sharing a meal together talking about, you know, La Familia. So it's kind of like we've closured it over and over again. And I feel so content with that. So this isn't like an, oh no, we'll never get it. And it's not like a, we've got to have it. We'll never have it like, for a franchise that became as outlandish as this, and particularly for one that went the direction that it did in 9, where you could kind of feel Vin Diesel being untethered from, it seemed like, other checks on his decision-making, creative interest, taste, editing choices. You could feel restraints on him, it felt like, in the prior entries, whereas in 9, it felt like the restraints were gone. It's like, all right, we're off the map. Whatever, guys. It kind of feels like this being how the franchise goes down is sort of perfect. Like, this level of crazy, this level of dissociated from reality, this level of, like, lack of, essentially, resolution of every character involved. It kind of feels, there's a poetry about that for this franchise that started with a surprise smash hit in 2001 and has become something else entirely of like cosmic scope. I don't know. There's a beauty in possibly ending with Dom staring down a tsunami and the screen cutting to black and us being promised a resolution that never comes. I don't know, I'm kind of in it. I'm kind of with it. There's like a, I don't know, is it like symmetry by way of total asymmetry that has the snake eating its tail? Anyway, I've gone on long enough. That is my, as I said, possible eulogy for the Fast franchise. And that is also our show for today. You can keep up with us wherever you get your podcasts for more keen insights such as this. Hit that follow button wherever you are listening to get every new episode in your feed as it drops. Follow us to find out more on Instagram at Feeling Seen Pod. We are also on Blue Sky. Just search Feeling Seen. If you want to follow me, I am Jorcrew on Twitter and Blue Sky. Our theme music is by Andrew Epen. This show was produced by Marissa Flaxbart. Our senior producers are Kevin Ferguson and Laura Swisher, and this is a production of Maximum Fun.
Maximum Fun,
a worker-owned network
of artist-owned shows.
Supported directly by you.